So looking at task 5. Task 5 is on management theory. This one's another one that's a little bit grey. You might recall from class what we did was we went on the journey from the early days of when academics tried to create models and analyse management and generate theories around management. There was management practice going back for thousands of years. But this is from the times when academics were trying to develop theories on management. So we'll start off with the idea of scientific management, which is about managers working out the best way of doing things and getting workers to do them that way. So management you could be using scientific measurement methods for doing that, and we might have looked at, you might recall we looked at the Hawthorne effect and in the wrong place. So, and the hazards of using scientific measurement, you better make sure that you're measuring what you're intending to measure. So, but you can do this sort of thing for if you're doing something which is going to be repeated a lot, something which has high aspects of risk, something which is very easily quantifiable and measurable. So if you're doing something like how to safely transport a prisoner from a vehicle into cells, how to determine routes that certain patrols should take, or the routes to drive prisoners between prisons, then you could be measuring and working out the best way, and everyone follows those rules for safety or economical reasons. But as we've seen in other areas, people like to be able to determine things, and people are individuals and have likes and dislikes. So if they can determine the way they do things, they can much better cater to those. So that's where this school breaks down, and where Frederick Winslow Taylor was consulting, there were often industrial action and such because people didn't like that level of control. It's sort of borderline micromanagement, that sort of thing, and people like to have more control over the way they do things. Then we have the idea of looking at the management role, and that's by Henri Fayol. So the idea that managers plan, organise, command, coordinate, control. So he identified these activities that managers do and looked at the idea of managing from that approach. Then we have the bureaucratic, Max Weber, where he looked at the idea of the organisation and the division of labour. So if we need to build the car, how can we break down that task? What is the most logical, efficient way? An organisation which has a hierarchy, where there's formalised rules, policies, where it's not on the individual, it's about the positions, and where it's merit-based selection. So these are his principles. And then we have the idea of the behavioural school, where we look at the idea that people who work in organisations are people. When you bring people together, they'll have certain interactions and influences on each other. So it's taking a people approach to management, which is, of course, a much more modern way. But we can borrow from all of these in being modern managers, and that's what contingency management is. So what we need to do for this task is, this is the key one, point 1. Briefly describe how any or all of these management theories might apply to a role in justice. So think of a specific role. Let's take our country senior sergeant in charge of a country police station. So I mentioned about planning routes or how to transport prisoners would be a good one there. When they're writing their budget, or when they're monitoring what staff are doing, that everything's happening okay, then they're doing these sorts of things. The bureaucratic, they're operating within a hierarchy and reports ups and following orders down. When they're keeping to policies and ensuring compliance, then they're following formalised rules. When they're recruiting, or thinking of the positions as positions rather than people, they're borrowing from that school. When they're building the team or influencing as a leader, when they're doing those sorts of social activities, they're borrowing from the behavioural school. So that's what you could be describing in your question, those sorts of things in your own words. Listing 5 internal, 5 external factors. That one's been particularly well, which might influence management behaviour. I'll give you an example of an internal one there. Might be a budget cut could change the way behaviour happened, or a change in policy. An external one, borrowing from the same one, could be a change in laws. So policy being internal, laws being external to the organisation. Each of those. So an example there could be in the changes in bullying and harassment laws could change the way people were treated within the organisation. So if we have a look at part 3, so come up with 5 of those. That one's been particularly well done by those who have been in class. Part 3, describe how the manager might determine ethical standards and apply them to the role. Now you've all been in the ethics class. How do organisations communicate to employees how they should behave? Think about that from ethics, and you might come up with some other ideas how the managers, so remember from ethics might be one point, another couple of ways could give you another point there for that particular question. How they might communicate, how a manager might know how to behave. That's task 5.